I am going to get started, and for most to know, my name is Stuart Schlossman. I'm president and founder of MS Views and News. I too am an MS patient, and I do have troubles with those words. I get tripped over them all the time. Okay, and tonight we have special guests. We have Julie Fiol from the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. She's the Associate Vice President of Healthcare Access, and you can see more about her right there in front of you. Okay, next we have Karen Mariner, and Karen is the Vice President, MS Navigator Experience for the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. Tonight's program, we are sponsored by, I didn't see that at the beginning, there we go. We are sponsored by Sanofi Genzyme, Bristol Myers Squibb, and Biogen. Sorry to be stepping out of line here, but hey, I have MS and I forget, you know? So give me credit for that, all right? All right, so let's get into tonight's program. So tonight's program, again, we have Julie Fiol. Julie is the Associate Vice President of Healthcare Access at the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. She leads, or Ms. Fiol leads, a team to implement solutions and remove barriers to accessing quality care. Julie oversees the Society's professional workforce development and educational effort and ensures people living with multiple sclerosis have the information they need to make informed healthcare decisions. Most recently, Ms. Fiol has coordinated the Society's COVID-19 vaccine advisory group that develops guidance for people living with multiple sclerosis. So for everybody that reads what the Society's doing and you see the changes and you don't like it, contact Julie. All right, there you go. All right, next we have Karen Mariner. Karen is Vice President, like I said, the MS Navigator Experience. Karen leads a comprehensive nationwide strategy to empower people to solve everyday challenges of MS. Since joining the Society in 2001, Karen has served in a series of progressive leadership roles. Through these roles, she has leveraged her background in social services and activism to develop innovative ways at the community, state, and federal levels to attain resources to meet the needs of the affected MS community. All right, great. Thank you for that. And sorry if I tripped over any words. A lot of new words in there for me to learn. Okay. Karen, Julie, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I am so welcome to have you guys on board. I'm so welcome to have been able to speak with you beforehand to learn more about you both. Now, I'm going to have questions, and I'm going to go back and forth with these questions for the two of you. But for the audience, please remember that if you have any questions based on the topics that we're talking about, please keep everything relevant to who we're speaking to. All right? This is not, you're not speaking to MS neurologists. You're not speaking to a nurse practitioner. So please don't be asking any questions that concern multiple sclerosis as the disease itself, because these two wonderful people will not be able to answer that, but they can answer the questions, you know, relevant, I said, to what we are talking about tonight. So if you do have any questions, please click on the orange box at the top of the toolbar on the right side and type in your questions, and I will answer them greatly. All right, so for tonight, COVID-19 updates from the National MS Society. Julie, Karen, who wants to go first? Tell me who wants to first start answering this, and maybe the other one could fill in the gaps a little bit.
Well, my guess would be that Julie would want to start because I think the breaking news continues to be around the vaccine and the booster. So, Julie, maybe you want to kick us off, and then I can add in when needed.
Absolutely. Thanks for that opportunity, Karen. And Stuart, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. It's great to be with you. I think everybody is aware that the biggest news right now is around boosters, but there's also language out there that we're talking about called an additional dose. And they're actually two different things, and the recommendations and the suggestions are different for each of them. So I guess I could start by saying for people living with MS, the breaking news is that the FDA has authorized an additional dose for people who are immunocompromised or who may not have had an adequate response to the vaccine. And when we say adequate response, they're looking at antibody responses. And the CDC has recommended that people who are not expected to have an adequate response to the vaccine get an additional dose now. And they're talking about the mRNA vaccines. So those are the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, which is now FDA approved under Comirnaty is the brand name for that one, and I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly. And the other one is the Moderna vaccine. So anyone who's had 2 doses of those, who is immunocompromised or not expected to have an adequate response, antibody response to the vaccine, should get an additional dose. The other breaking news is around boosters. And so that is basically the statement that we heard, I think it was just last week, but time is moving so fast. It seems like a long time ago that everybody is likely to need or will need a booster about 8 months after they received a vaccine. There are 2 doses of an mRNA vaccine. We heard today, I think it was today or yesterday, in a press release from Johnson & Johnson that they are submitting data to the FDA recommending a booster dose of their vaccine 8 months after someone was vaccinated with the 1-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So there's a lot of language, there's a lot of different terms, a lot is happening.
Good. Thank you for that. Karen, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think well, not breaking news, I think what I would add is that we know that as we were moving towards whatever the next normal is, I suppose, and it was looking like there was light at the end of the tunnel, and now the news of the Delta variant, I think what we've also heard and are paying attention to is just kind of the emotions and where people are kind of mentally and emotionally around having to mask up and needing to mask up again, and what the communities are going through, and just being prepared to help people with MS and their families kind of navigate the emotional ups and downs that we continue to move through. And so I think that's certainly something we're paying attention to from an MS Navigator perspective.
Okay, thank you for that. So specifically, what does the booster mean for like the MS patients? Who should be getting it first, or should everybody just be running to get their boosters?
Well, the answer from the CDC is that people should not be running, not everyone should be running to get their booster just yet. It hasn't been authorized by the FDA, and it hasn't been recommended from the CDC or by the CDC just yet. But if you are immunocompromised, you should be getting an additional dose, which many people are commonly referring to as a booster. But this is where I was trying to make the distinction because they're a little bit different. So someone who is immunocompromised could get an additional dose now. Those of us who are not and who have received 2 doses of one of the mRNA vaccines should be getting a booster soon after September 20th, according to our regulatory agencies. But for people who live with MS, I think one of the main questions that we have is, so who is immunocompromised and should be getting an additional dose now? And for a long time, we've been saying having MS does not mean you have a compromised immune system.
That's right.
So what we're referring to are people who are using a disease-modifying therapy, or DMT, that does make them have less than or not an adequate, that's the FDA's language, not an adequate response to the vaccine. So when they're looking at antibodies to the spike protein that we get in the vaccine or from the vaccine, they're finding that people who use certain medications, and in MS, it's some of the disease-modifying therapies, who don't mount or receive as strong or robust of an antibody response. And those are the people who should be getting an additional dose now.
Right, thank you for that. I want you to repeat again, please. Why is it that, a lot of people with multiple sclerosis, again, since the very beginning of this, we had a lot of our neurologists that was speaking online with us all the time, having to remind people that MS is not a compromising disease. This is something that they never really learned from the get-go, and they thought automatically, wow, I have an autoimmune disease, I have this, I have that, and I'm just like an HIV patient. But they need to learn that they're the total opposite. So can you say anything to our audience about that, please?
Yeah, it's a great question and a great point to keep driving home, Stuart. So for someone with MS, your immune system is perhaps even overactive. It's doing things and creating trouble in your own body. And so it's too revved up. And in someone who is immunocompromised, that means that the immune system has been weakened and it has lessened your ability to fight infections. So MS does not do that. It doesn't weaken your immune system. If anything, as you said, Stuart, it's a little bit overactive. Some studies have shown there's less chances or less infections reported in people with MS, not taking into account disease-modifying therapies. But the way the medications work to try to tame some of that overactivity of the immune system from MS, that can put someone at a state where they're not able to get the full immune responses after vaccination.
That's right. Thank you for that. And Karen, would you like to further tag along on this, please?
Well, I think and I think the educational piece is really important here. And I think you highlighted, people understanding what their disease is. And that's really the role of MS Navigator Experience is to help empower people through providing education and information so that people understand their disease and can be empowered and work with their healthcare provider to make informed decisions. And Julie and I work hand in glove, really, in a lot of this work to ensure people have the right and trusted information so that they can make the best decisions to ultimately live their best lives.
Hey, thank you for that. All right, so Karen, your turn to go first. How is the National MS Society supporting the MS community during COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're supporting people affected by MS in a number of ways. And I just talked about the educational piece, but what we learned fairly quickly as COVID hit is there were a lot of questions, understandably so, from the MS community about what COVID meant for them. And so we were able to pivot and provide virtual online educational programs. Many may be familiar with our weekly Ask the MS Expert. And so we were really responding quite nimbly to what people affected by MS were asking, and that was a lot about understanding COVID and the impact of COVID on them and their health. So we provided the virtual educational programs. We also recognized that social isolation was something that people with MS were experiencing, and certainly with the increased risk for depression that people with MS were really experiencing. Social isolation was certainly a bigger challenge. And so we were providing support through ensuring that our support groups were able to meet virtually and setting our leaders up with the technology platforms to be able to create those peer-to-peer connections that are so valuable, as well as building strategic partnerships to provide 24 hours, 24/7 support through partners such as Happy the app to try and decrease and address the social isolation that was being experienced. And then we also provided direct support and resources through our MS Navigator program. We fielded over 41,000 calls last year, and those calls were related to connecting to and finding the right information, but employment questions, dealing with that social isolation, as I mentioned, as well as the financial toll that COVID-19 was taking on individuals and their families. So we were able to provide support through direct financial assistance to stabilize the situation. We were also able to connect people to community resources. And then what we also did was we supported the community through advocacy efforts, advocating to, pass laws that would protect people with MS and secure the financial safety net that people really are relying on.
Right. So let me ask you a question with that before you go forward. You talk about the financial assistance. What was done for people who were put out of work because of this, and people being the MS community? What if they couldn't pay their mortgage? I mean, for how long could the society sustain a person for what they were having to deal with?
Well, and this is where our advocacy work was so critical, because we were successful in advocating for the moratorium on evictions. And so we were able to leverage our financial assistance and connect them with long-term solutions. We also provide what within the MS Navigator experience, we have a specialty team called the Benefits and Employment Team. And so we have people who specialize in employment supports. And so for people who lost their job or were at risk of losing their job or needed support asking for accommodations, our specialists were able to connect those individuals with state resources such as vocational rehab for job retraining and vocational rehabilitation efforts to help find employment.
Right. A quick question because a lot of people have this on their mind, but when a landlord is told that they cannot evict somebody, how long does that go on for, and how do they even then get paid for it? What if the landlord has got multiple sclerosis? I mean, how do you justify it? How does all this work out?
Yeah, so the moratorium allows for protections for people, and I think that one of the things that what we have done is we've provided some level of financial support to be able to pay for rent when we can. And I think those are still things that we have to, those are still some of the unanswered questions. We certainly know it probably can't last forever. But until, we certainly move through the Delta variant, I think it's important that these safety nets continue so that people can live in their homes.
Okay. Julie, have you got anything to add to this? And then I've got questions to ask from the audience.
So I think I will just add, and Karen mentioned that we work so closely together to make sure that people living with MS have the information that they need to make decisions with their healthcare providers. We think all decisions should be made in partnership with your healthcare provider. And so if you don't have the information you need to make an informed decision, then we're not doing our jobs. And so our job is to make sure that you know about COVID-19, you know about your risks. Early in the pandemic, we made sure people knew as soon as we knew if it was safe to continue on your disease modifying therapy. If you're at increased risk, who is at increased risk for getting sick? How do we stay safe? I mean, just thinking back to when this started, there were so many unanswered questions. And you still hear from people. We still hear from people that say, I didn't know I had that option. I didn't know that was a choice. And so there are some things that I know you're going to ask me later, so I won't go into them, but it's so critically important that not only are we supporting people through education and connections and support, but that we're giving them the information they need to feel empowered to make decisions.
Great. Thank you for that. All right. I'm going to ask you a few questions because I don't want to get too far into this, and then their questions might be not what we're talking about at the time, so let me ask this, all right? And either one of you can jump in on this. Just don't fight, don't beat each other up over who's going to answer, okay? All right. Is there any guidance for mixing of the vaccines, Moderna, Pfizer, or Moderna and Pfizer, or the J&J? I mean, what can you tell people about this, please? And thank you for taking a sip because I need one too.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a great question, whoever asked that. And the guidance from the CDC is saying, that the data are limited to advise that, and they're advising to use for your additional dose, use the same vaccine that you got for your first and second dose when available. If not, it is okay to use a different mRNA vaccine. The person who asked the question mentioned the J&J vaccine, so I want to make sure that we're clear that as of right now, there is no additional dose or booster recommended for the J&J vaccine because the FDA is still needing to review those data that were submitted. So it is okay, it's not preferred to mix and match the mRNA vaccines, but if you're not able to get the additional dose of the same vaccine you had the first time for your first and second dose, then it would be okay.
Okay, the person's name was David, and I guess I left it out, but he was specifically asking about mixing Moderna and Pfizer. So. Oh,
okay. You may have said that, and I missed it. So, David, the advice from the CDC is if you can avoid it, avoid it. If you can't, it's okay to mix.
Great. And Karen, I guess you don't have anything to add to that, or you do have
I'm not. Julie has this much more better done than I do. I'm not gonna fight her to answer that one.
All right, no problem. Tammy is asking a question that I don't know how to even know if this is a full question, but she's saying, I was told Ocrevus was weaker. Is that true? I have type 1 diabetes. I don't think that this is a question for either of you, but just let me know if real quick you want to answer this or not. And then I'll know what to tell Tammy.
Well, maybe Tammy could clarify. She was told that Ocrevus was weaker, but I'm not sure what she means in terms of weaker than what. Maybe,
Right.
I mean, I could speculate in a few different ways, but maybe Tammy could type her question again and we could try to come back to it.
Exactly. All right, so she might have. All right, so the vaccinate, she wrote another question, I guess. The vaccinations were not as strong. I wonder if I qualify for an additional shot.
Okay, I think I'm piecing her two questions together. It seems that Tammy's on Ocrevus, and she may have had her antibodies to the vaccine checked, and those were weaker. So what was the second part of her question again, Stuart?
Well, the first part was I was told Ocrevus was weaker. Is that true? I have type 1 diabetes. And the second part was the vaccinations were not as strong. I wonder if I qualify for the additional shot.
So yes, she would, because of the way our guidance, the National MS Society's guidance, and the data that we have from studies that have looked at the antibody response to COVID-19 vaccines, Tammy should be getting an additional dose. But having said that, she should be talking with her healthcare provider first.
Exactly.
The timing, if I could add, because the timing of, first of all, the decision should be made with her healthcare provider, but the timing of when she would get that additional dose is something she should also be talking with her provider about.
Okay, thank you for that. There still is. There's a friend of mine whose daughter's got multiple sclerosis, and she's on Ocrevus. And she immediately, as soon as she heard that the booster was available, she immediately went for her shot. They don't think that she got really anything out of the first shot based on, I don't know what based on, because they said they did antibodies, but I told my friend that there's no real answer to antibodies, from what we've learned of, getting tested for antibodies. Nobody really knows what that means. And you could explain that afterwards as well. But the other day she got her other shot and she had a tremendous amount of pain in her lymph nodes. And she called her neurologist and he says, that's the best news I've heard. And she said, why? He says, that means you were affected. That means that it worked for you. So, so they were all delighted with that. What can you tell us, though, about the antibodies that I was just referring to?
So the FDA is cautioning and advising clinicians to not use the antibody test to check after somebody has been vaccinated. Those antibody tests were designed to tell you if somebody was infected with the virus, the natural infection. They're used in a lot of cases to see what someone's antibody response to the vaccine was. But as you sort of alluded to, Stuart, we don't really know what number we're looking for, what number equals protection, because they weren't designed to measure the efficacy or how effective the vaccine is. So while they might be helpful in that it tells you there are no antibodies, it's not so helpful when there are some, but your question is, well, is that enough? And we don't know.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. Karen, we're going to be getting to you in a second. The next question is definitely for you, but I've got one more question to ask here, and I think that Julie's going to have to answer this. All right, Mary Lou writes, I'm on Ocrevus, and I'm planning on getting my next infusion in October. Just got the J&J vaccine shot in March, and I also plan to get my yearly flu shot in September. What schedule would you recommend for me to get all three, flu shot, booster, and Ocrevus? And which should come first, and how long should I wait between each one?
That's a great question there, Mary Lou. So I'm thrilled to hear that you're getting your flu shot. Congrats to you. The CDC is saying that you can get your flu shot and your COVID-19 vaccine at the same time. I believe they're recommending different arms, but they're saying it's safe to get them both at the same time. So if it's difficult for you to get out and get to a place to get your vaccine, it's perfectly okay to do both at the same time. Having said that, you had your J&J vaccine in March. We still don't have recommendations from the CDC or authorization or approval from the FDA for you to have an additional dose or a booster. I'm not going to say I don't know that there are people who, I'm sure there are people who are doing this against approvals or authorizations from the FDA or CDC. I would say talk this over with your healthcare provider. Our guidance suggests waiting 4 weeks if you are using Ocrevus after your vaccine before you would get your Ocrevus. So getting the vaccine, waiting 4 weeks before you get your Ocrevus would be the suggestion for timing between vaccine till your dosing. But in terms of when you should get that vaccine, I would say have that discussion with your healthcare provider.
Okay, thank you. And Mary Lou says thank you. How about that? So you said something at the beginning of your talk, of this answer. You said, I don't know about the arms. Are you talking about left and right arm, or are you talking about? Okay.
So they're saying you can get both shots or both vaccinations at the same time. Do them in different arms.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I was just joking around with you. I didn't know you were really meaning different arms. All right. What if somebody wanted to include getting a shingle shot? How do they do all that, Nan?
Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head. I would have to look on the CDC's website. I would probably say 3 might be too many, especially if if you want to try to track side effects, what's causing what. Yeah, but we can fact check me by checking with the CDC.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, Karen, I know that this one is definitely for you first. Can you explain to us what the Navigator program is and how the program evolved since the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. So the MS Navigator serves as a supportive partner, offering personalized support to those affected by MS. It's free and it is nationwide. No matter where you live in the country, you can access an MS Navigator. Navigators are educated, highly experienced professionals. Most of, I would say not most, but the majority of our MS Navigator team have advanced degrees, master level degrees in psychology, social work, and counseling. And they work one-on-one with individuals, offering support, information, and connection to resources. And we offer a variety of ways to connect. And this is something that we've learned about throughout the pandemic, is that people really want to be able to connect with a navigator in a way that's most relevant to them. So currently you can connect via phone, online via chat, as well as email. And in the future, we are hoping to offer text as an option. And MS Navigator addresses a range of issues. We answer and provide general information to people. We help answer questions from those newly diagnosed, how to find the right healthcare provider, considerations in thinking about finding the right provider for you, working through health insurance options, how to select the right health insurance, how to navigate through what is a complex web-like system that we all know so well. Sometimes having someone who really understands the ins and outs can be so helpful. And that's what a navigator will do. Employment issues, we connect people and provide support and disclosure, how to disclose, requesting accommodations, wellness solutions, and when needed, when problems or issues are really complex and people may not have the ability to navigate a lot of community resource or need a more intensive support, we're able to provide case management services for people, and that's specialized social work support, basically. And we've pivoted. What we've learned through the pandemic is that we really were able to pivot to provide more support in a virtual environment. We also recognized COVID really shined a light on health disparities, that for portions of our population, the Black and Hispanic Latinx populations, it really illuminated what many already knew, that there were significant health disparities within the MS community. And so We are providing targeted education to the Black MS community. We'll have our second Black MS Summit the end of September. And so that's something that we've certainly been paying attention to. And then evolving to create more what we call self-service options. So that people can find the information themselves when they need it, when it's most convenient for them. And we continue to evolve. We've had a lot of learnings from COVID, and we are continuing to put those into practice.
That's great. Thank you. Where can people find out more information about this online? Is it available on the National MS Society's website?
Yeah. So if you go onto the National MS Society website and in the search field put MS Navigator, our MS Navigator page will pop up. And you'll get all of the ways, you'll be able to see all of the ways you can connect with a navigator through the phone number, email, and on various pages of the website, the chat box will pop up and give you the option of chatting with a navigator. All of the information, what's wonderful is the information that Julie just shared about the boosters and the additional dose and our vaccine recommendations are all available on the website. And if you have trouble finding any of that information, you can connect with a navigator and they will connect you to the information that you're looking for.
Perfect. Thank you. Julie, you want to add anything? If not, I do have a question or two to ask.
I don't think I have anything to add about what MS Navigator is or does after Karen just gave that great.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. I guess she knows what she's talking about, right, Karen?
I hope so.
All right. So Tammy wants to know, is there a limit on the amount of MS Navigator services? I'm wondering if she means financial,
The financial
like, is there a limit on financial, or even how much a person could even contact the Navigator system or services and ask questions?
There is no limit to how often you can reach out to an MS Navigator at all. We do have people who call regularly, and we certainly welcome that. We're here when you need it. And that's really one of the most important services that we provide to people affected by MS. In terms of some of the financial assistance, what we do is we take each individual situation into account and look at people holistically. Certainly there are some limits. Our financial assistance is really designed to stabilize a situation or connect someone to ensure safety and independence. So for example, if someone really is at threat of an eviction, we will provide financial assistance to stabilize that situation while working through a long-term solution. We also are able to provide financial assistance if someone needs to have a home modification. So this is something we probably all are experiencing as everyone's doing home modeling projects right now. We all looked around our homes and decided we wanted to change everything. And we are certainly hearing from people with MS that they want to be able to make the modifications they need to stay at home. And costs have gone up there as well. And so, but that is something we're able to provide more assistance to help with those out-of-pocket costs for those modifications. And so it really is a case-by-case situation.
Okay, thank you. A guy named Stuart is asking, is there a time limit on the calls, and what time of day is it best to call?
Yeah, there's no time limit on the calls. We really stay with a person and answer all of their questions and provide the support they need as long as they need it. We are open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Mountain Time. I'm terrible with time zones. I cannot translate them for you. I apologize. After 20 years, you'd think I'd be really good at this, and I'm not. But, and the one thing I will say is when you go onto our website, if you send an email, we get back to everyone within 1 to 2 business days.
Great, thank you. And for those that need a translation, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Mountain Time is 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, okay? We go through this with people all the time. So when I'm flying around the country, I have to keep track of where I am and what time of day it is.
I fly across the country. Do you think I would know this by now, Stuart? You think I'd have this down, and I just don't. I
don't wear a watch anymore because it was too much of a problem. It's easier for my phone to tell me what time it is, I pick up the real time wherever I am. Okay, Next question I have for you, and thank you for those questions, and I mean, not the questions, thank you for those answers, Karen, and I'm going to continue with, can you provide us with direct resources offered by the National Multiple Sclerosis Society or other organizations that people affected by MS can access remotely?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'd already talked about MS Navigator, and we have a number of educational programs that are offered virtually that anyone can access. The Ask the MS Expert, which is our weekly webinar series, which is hosted on Fridays, which is also live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Still trying to understand what Twitch is. Twitch
I don't know. Tell me what that is.
I think it's a game. So I get Julie nod because I feel like you're more in the know about
next.
No, tell me.
It's a gaming platform. It's a gaming platform. And so we have a community on Twitch, much younger than I, and that's the way they connect. And so we live stream on Twitch. We also have MS Friends, which is a volunteer peer support program that offers one-to-one peer support. We also have our Facebook online community. And one of the other, again, if you connect with MS Navigator, we connect people to other MS organizations such as yours, and other MS organizations that are providing information, resources, and support that people can connect to, as well as community, state, and local government resources.
Okay, Julie, can you tell us more about Twitch? And Karen, again, thank you for that. Thank you for that information.
Could I have a different question, please?
Yeah, you can have a different question. We should bring on somebody younger to tell us about this.
I can bring my son in as a speaker. He's 14 years old. He knows Twitch.
I'm going to ask anybody online, if you know something about Twitch, please write me what it is that you can tell me about this right now and where others can find this. But I don't see anybody answering, so we must be all old. Okay. All right. Next question I have for you, and I think that, Julie, you are definitely going to be taking this one. How does the FDA approval of the Pfizer vaccine impact people living with multiple sclerosis?
Oh, wow. What a good question. So the vaccines have been authorized under an emergency use authorization for many months, since December, for the first vaccine. And so millions of people have received this vaccine, or the vaccines, and they're incredibly effective. They're incredibly safe. We have lots of data to show us that now. But what changes now is that there are some people who were really waiting for that last full approval from the FDA to feel like, for them, that was an indication of safety. So how does that affect someone with MS? Well, maybe someone with MS was one of those people that was waiting for the full approval to feel that they were safe and ready to get vaccinated, and hopefully they are now. The other way it could help people with MS is that many places, as we're hearing in the news, are developing vaccine mandate programs. So for everyone that wrote in and asked about their Ocrevus and their additional dose, people who are likely to not, or we don't know if they're as protected as other people because they're likely to not have an adequate antibody response to the vaccine. So perhaps these vaccine mandates that we're seeing employers and local governments implementing, perhaps that will bring an additional level of protection to people living with MS. Our guidance says encouraging those close to you to get vaccinated is one of the greatest ways, other than getting yourself vaccinated, to protect yourself. So I think my best answer to how does that affect someone living with MS is it may encourage more people around you to become vaccinated and help keep you safer.
Okay, thank you. So still though, there are umpteenth amount of people that gave the excuse that they're waiting for FDA approval. Now it's FDA approved and they still have more excuses. How do we really convince these people that, life is too short to be sitting around? I mean, what is it going to take to get these people, everybody out there that's just not, in agreement with taking this vaccine? I mean, especially those living with multiple sclerosis, how much better off they would be to be vaccinated than not. Is there anything that either of you can tell us about this, please?
So I'll start. I think it really starts with education and listening to understand what the concerns are. We certainly do here through MS Navigator, many of the questions that we've fielded today, we certainly get those questions from people with MS who are hesitant or still reluctant or still have a lot of questions. And really it's our job as professionals to just listen without judgment and really understand where the fears are, and then walking people through the vaccine guidance and our recommendations, helping kind of break it apart and address the fears. And I think, as Julie said, really helping to talking about, what you need as a person living with MS is for your loved ones to be vaccinated to keep you safe. And that's what ultimately people want. And those are hard conversations. And I think that this is also where Navigator can be helpful, is just thinking through how you approach a conversation like that. I don't know, Julie, if there's anything you would add to that.
I would add a little bit, but really it's just using different words to restate what you've already said. I do think there's a difference between people who are against vaccine and those that are just reluctant. And I think the way you approach it is very different. So I think what Karen was suggesting is more the approach for people who are just still afraid. They're unsure. They're not, they might be people who get a flu shot every year, but they're just not sure about this COVID-19 vaccine. It's all too new to them. And so having that non-judgmental approach, listening, validating their concerns, their fears, asking if you can provide some information to them, ensuring that the sources of their information are credible, and not just through social media. And then, asking, this is some of the guidance we give to our clinicians who are having these discussions, asking them, what is it that might change your mind, or what is it that you're waiting for? For those who are saying, I'm just not ready yet. Well, what does it look like? When would you be ready? What are you looking for to be ready? And then asking, can we check back in then? Things like that just kind of give people a plan. But autonomy is really important. And so it's about making sure people have the information they need. They don't feel judged, they don't feel threatened, and they don't feel forced. And hopefully they will get themselves to a place where they're comfortable making that decision.
Okay, thank you for that. Quick thing, mask wearing. There are a lot of people out there that, have true problems with wearing a mask because, like a K95, it's very difficult to wear these things and be able to breathe for more than a half hour at a time. And do you have anything that you want to tell people about that? Because, it's a big subject that a lot of people with MS is saying that, well, I've already had breathing problems, and how do I wear this mask? And I mean, I've got answers for them, but I would rather that you guys give them answers. And if you could answer that right now, a K95 versus a fabric mask. And, if they're alone in a room, in a big room, they think that wearing a mask is protecting them somehow when there's nobody there. Okay, so, there are the pluses, the minuses, and everything that goes with it. What can you tell people, please, about mask wearing?
Do you want me to go first, Karen?
Sure.
So I think you said a lot, but something came to mind too that you mentioned, that people feel if they're in a room by themselves and they're wearing a mask, they feel protected. So I don't want us to get through this program and not acknowledge the people who are doing all of the things they can to protect themselves. They're getting vaccinated, they're wearing their mask, they're distancing, they're doing everything we're asking them to do. And yet, and now with the Delta variant and people are starting to mask up again and going back to some of those same safety protocols, it's not as bad. But we hear from people who live with MS that weren't able to do those things because they didn't have or didn't know if they were as protected as others. And people didn't understand, well, why aren't you comfortable? We're all vaccinated. We can go to dinner. Why do you still want to stay home? So we have to acknowledge that everyone's in a different place in terms of how protected they are, but they're also in a different place about how comfortable they're feeling and their anxiety. And we all need to be just have a little more empathy and thinking about how others are feeling. And in terms of masks, masks are good. We should all be wearing them right now when we're in public, whether you're vaccinated or not. Mask good, Delta variant not good. So, that's my short answer. But for people, I recognize it is difficult to keep them on. I think it's probably just some basic recommendations. Are you able to avoid those settings where you would need to be wearing a mask? Are you able to limit the times? Are you able to, try to be, it's hot in a mask and it depends on where you are right now. It's still August. So can you be somewhere where you're air conditioned but have the mask on, and trying to do other things in addition to it? But it's hard to say, oh, take it off, because we still need it right now. And so I would say trying to avoid those situations when possible. It's almost like we're right back at the start of the pandemic.
We really are.
That we know more now. Except that we know more now as even a community. We know what we're able to do. We don't have to run around with gloves on. We don't have to run around, doing things that we don't have to be changing our clothes every 10 minutes. Right? So we do know a lot of other things. Go ahead, please.
And just to add to what Julie said, thinking about what are the things that you have control over, and where you can plan. Does your local grocery store, many grocery stores continued with the early senior citizen, people with disabilities hours. Can you get groceries delivered? Thinking about how you can minimize, being out in the community. You have a right to be out in the community, but how do you plan ahead? And that is where people, I think, can have a sense of that control again when we're all feeling a sense of being out of control to a certain extent.
Right. Okay, so I have a couple of questions that people have asked. Michael is asking, he's saying, I live in a house. Is there a way for a reduction of property tax for people with multiple sclerosis?
That's a great question. So there are a variety of different tax credits for homeowners who may have made a modification to their home or to help with the financial costs. Every state has a different program, of course. And so I can't answer a specific question, but this is where a navigator can be helpful. If you call the 1-800 number and talk with a navigator, we can explore what options exist. We've been successful. Our advocacy team has been successful in several states in passing a home modification tax credit that people could qualify for. And there are other tax credits that you might be eligible for. And again, connecting with a navigator is the right first step to try and learn more information about that.
Okay, thank you for that. So if a person wants to remodel their kitchen, to make it easier for them to reach cupboards, how does that get proven that that's a need, especially if like a person is using or living in a wheelchair or in a scooter to get around their apartment and they can't stand on a regular basis? So if they need to take their upper cabinets and make everything so that new, is that coverable?
Yeah, so what a navigator will do is we will work with you to identify contractors, considerations, things that you need to think about in making your modification. You would get multiple estimates. And then what we would do is we would leverage our financial assistance and community resources that you might qualify for to help try and mitigate or minimize the out-of-pocket costs that you might put out as much as possible. Home modifications really range. We've seen costs go up because of supply costs going up. And so we'll work hand in hand with that person. Like, what are your immediate goals? It may not have to be a large scale modification. It could be a smaller modification. It could be rearranging your kitchen in a way that allows you to have more access. And occupational therapists are amazing people and are really creative. And so that's really the magic of the Navigator program. It's really meeting you where you're at, understanding what your goals are, and then thinking through what's the right solution that we can help connect you with.
Great, thank you for that. All right, Michael, who was asking about the property tax, is asking you to repeat the entire number, please. You only said the 800 number.
Yep. So absolutely. To reach a Navigator, you can call 1-800-344-4867.
Great. Thank you. Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. 1-800-344-4867.
Okay. I wrote that down, so if anybody still does not hear that, they can just question it, and I will put it in the box for everybody to see, okay? All right, David is asking, are you hearing of people or from people having low CO2 in their blood because of wearing a mask for long periods of time?
I mean, we're not hearing that through Navigator. I don't know, Julie, if you're hearing that.
No, and I haven't seen any studies showing that in the blood. So no, I'm not hearing that. That's not to say that they aren't out there. I just have not seen them.
Okay. All right. Well, David, that's your answer for that. Okay. Michael says, thank you for repeating the phone number. Okay. He's got it down now, so we could go forward from there. Okay. All right. So next, all right. I don't know who's going to answer this, but I'll leave it up to the two of you to fight it out from your mileage differences, okay? What can you tell us, please, about the COVI MS registry, and what is its purpose? How can people participate? And just so you know, we have this on our website. I know you guys have it on your website, obviously, because you're one of the founders of this. But what can you tell us about this, and what can people really digest from learning and following it?
So Karen and I are friends, so we're not going to fight about this. We'll just
You have a friendship fight.
Yeah. So
fight.
COVI MS is a registry of people who live with MS who got COVID-19 infection. So they were infected with the virus, and this is a registry that their clinician would enter their information into. So as you said, Stuart, we started this National MS Society, the Consortium of MS Centers, and the MS Society of Canada started this registry. There are over 3,000 cases of COVID-19 reported in the registry now. And it allows us to, a lot of the learnings that we have in terms of how people who live with MS are affected by COVID-19 come from that data initiative, as well as other initiatives across the globe, and researchers sharing their data together so we can learn more. So that's how we learned who is at the highest risk for having worse outcomes from COVID. So the registry is still active. We still very much want your clinician. If you are unfortunately diagnosed with COVID-19, we very much want your clinician to enter the information about your MS and about your COVID-19 into that database, especially now that a lot of people are vaccinated. They're collecting vaccination status, and we hope to start to learn more about COVID-19 and how well protected people are after vaccination. So please, if you get diagnosed, ask your clinician or your healthcare provider to enter your information into the COVI MS registry.
Yeah, so that's an issue that, sorry to interject a minute, Karen, I'll let you go in a moment, but I've had people, I have nobody, but I hear from people who tell me that they're diagnosed with COVID. Unfortunately, they've been diagnosed with COVID in very, very minor degrees of having it, more like just having a cold. And that came from pre-vaccination and post-vaccination, but yet they can't get their doctors to recognize it other than like saying, okay, that's great, I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. But how do you get all these doctors to actually get on board and do something? Is it only for the neurologists, or are private healthcare providers also being told about this? Are primary physicians being told about this?
Yeah, No, that's a really good question and a really good point. So you're hearing from people that their clinicians just aren't taking the time to enter their data. That's really unfortunate. Because it is set up for any clinician to be able to enter that data. So that's a good suggestion. How can we get this in front of other people who may be encountering someone with MS? I mean, in our world, that's typically the neurologist or the physician assistant or the nurse practitioner that's providing the MS care that's going to hear about them having COVID and MS and would go in and enter this. So that's where we've been focusing the marketing efforts. But yeah, other than saying you're contributing to what we're learning, and that's what we need, especially during times of a global pandemic where we need evidence to make recommendations.
Right. So, Karen, again, sorry to interject here, but on a lot of our programs, we have the neurologists also speak about the COVI MS registry. And I know that MS Views and News is doing this, but I don't know if other MS organizations are handling this during their virtual programs. And is there any way for you all to get the information to the other MS organizations, and not just the organizations, but what about all of your self-help group leaders to have that information to give to their members?
Oh, it's interesting you asked that, because our most recent self-help group leader newsletter includes information about the COVI MS registry.
Must be smart.
We're of like mind, Stuart. That's amazing. It's uncanny. The other thing I would say just is that the COVI MS registry is amazing. We have this information available on our website. There are other COVID-19 related studies that are currently recruiting people with MS that also help to inform kind of how we can support people affected by MS through all of this. And I would just also encourage people to take a look at that. You can also call a navigator, and then navigators can direct you to that part of our website. And one of those studies that just, I would highlight is I Conquer MS, which is collecting information about how people are dealing with COVID-19. And so, I just want to put a plug in for that. And we do share this information in a number of ways. We talk about the COVI MS registry during Ask the MS Expert. We talk about that with many of our other online educational programs. We let our self-help group leaders know about this and the studies I mentioned, because they're a key part of really helping get the word out to the MS community.
Okay, great. Thank you. Maybe you could send something to us that we can put out more officially about this as well. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, great. All right, next, Julie, this one is for you. I've only got 2 questions remaining, multiple parts for each of you, but regardless, it's just one for you, Julie, and then next, Karen, for you. Can you briefly tell us about post-exposure prevention treatment for COVID-19?
Right. And I'm going to wrap in treatment for COVID-19. So we're talking about the registries and people who live with MS who may get diagnosed with COVID. So in addition to either entering your own data in one of the studies that I Conquer MS is doing, or having your clinician having your clinician enter your data into COVI MS, we want you to know that there are monoclonal antibody treatments for COVID-19 that are available to people. And so a lot of people are getting them through their MS healthcare providers, actually. They are safe to use with disease-modifying therapies, but you do need to check on the timing. If you get treated with a monoclonal antibody for COVID-19, you may have to delay one of your medications. So it's definitely important to check in with your provider, but to know that because you have MS does not mean you should not have access to one of these treatments. One of them was actually recently authorized by the FDA to be used prophylactically, so to be used to prevent COVID-19. So for somebody who is in that group that we talked about earlier that's immunocompromised and eligible for an additional dose, you would also be eligible to receive this treatment that is typically reserved for people who have COVID-19 and need to be treated. But if you don't have COVID-19, but you are vulnerable to it in that you're immunocompromised and you're exposed to someone who ends up contacting you and saying, I got diagnosed with COVID-19, contact your healthcare provider. You could be eligible to receive this treatment to prevent COVID-19. It's very important. We've been talking about other ways to mitigate the risk: masking, vaccine, additional dose, boosters, monoclonal antibody treatments.
Right. Thank you for that. What do you say, though, to a person that was very questionable about taking the vaccine until FDA approved? And what do you now tell them about this Regeneron not being FDA approved except for emergency use? So why should they trust using that any more than getting vaccinated?
Well, first of all, it's not a replacement for being vaccinated. Vaccination is still the best way to prevent COVID. But if they're, I mean, you're right, Stuart, I might not be able to convince this person to get that treatment. But like I've been saying, what we're trying to accomplish is letting people know what's available to them.
Okay.
There's so many clinicians that didn't know this was available and that this was an option and that it was safe to use in MS. So we definitely want to make people aware. How do we make them do it? I mean, I'd say it's having a similar conversation to describing the vaccines. It's understanding their fears, asking them for their concerns in a non-judgmental way, answering their questions. Validation, validation, validation. Right.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. All right. Next, by the way, we got an answer about Twitch before Karen. I'm gonna let you, Karen. I'm gonna let you follow up on this. But Twitch is like a live stream. It's just done better. Evidently, there's better usage of. It's a streaming program, and it's got gamma something in it, and I don't understand that. So I'll leave that up to the younger. Community. All right. Also,
as will I. Yeah, as will I.
Okay, good. All right. So do you want to tell us anything further, though, about what Julie was just talking about, or should I move on to the next question?
I think I'm ready for the next question.
Great. And that one is for you. But Julie, I do want to thank you for everything that you answered tonight. I love talking to you, and I can't wait to speak with you all more and more. Okay. Karen, let's talk about the MS support groups today. How does one access your virtual support groups? Because we, MS Views and News, hear from so many people that say, I used to attend this and I used to attend that, but I can't do this. And there are no farmer programs anymore. And I'm like, I can't answer everything, but is there a better way that even we can help to promote the work that you all are doing?
Yeah, so we do have our support groups. The way people would access the virtual support groups, I feel like I'm a broken record. I'm going to start with MS Navigator
right.
as a source of an initial source. But all of this information is also on our website. So we have a page dedicated to our support groups, and there's information on how to make connections to a particular group. We have a group on Discord, which is another streaming platform. Stuart, sorry, I'm throwing all of these at you tonight.
It's fine.
Don't ask me what Discord is either. But people can access one of two ways, via Navigator or by accessing our website and connecting with the group through our website. Right now, we do have a handful of groups, so we are working very closely with all of our self-help group leaders to equip them with everything they need to meet safely in person. Some groups are and have decided to meet in person, and we've provided them safety protocols to be able to do that. But I will say the majority of our groups and group leaders have decided to continue to meet virtually. And what we have found is, in talking with our group leaders, is what the virtual opportunity has provided is it's really opened the door to include people who never had the opportunity to be a part of the group because they couldn't get there in person for a variety of reasons. And they are making connections and growing the size of their group and meeting new people in their community, which I think has been a real plus. Bright side to COVID is we've been able to connect with people who were isolated, who had no way of getting connected to a self-help group. So again, we work very closely with leaders as they move through the process to determine whether or not they want to meet in person. But again, the majority of our groups really have decided to continue to meet virtually. And we'll probably, in the future have some type of hybrid option or may continue to meet virtually just because of the benefits that they've seen.
Right. So many people more can be reached virtually.
Absolutely.
Especially for all your groups that are in remote areas. So it might be great to do the program, but for those that can't get there, then it would be awesome if they can, still take part and be virtual at the same time.
Right. And we want to create those opportunities for connection and smaller, kind of more nuanced or I'm blanking on a word right now, obviously, conversations. And so, as I said, we had our Black MS Experience Summit, September 22nd and 23rd. And following that, in fact, we're hosting many of them right now. We have what we call community conversations, still virtual, again, because we want to make sure safety is top of mind. And these are more intimate settings, virtual intimate settings. And we have one Saturday in the Carolinas where we will bring people together and have that smaller, kind of more intimate conversation just to continue those opportunities for connection and networking.
That's right. So question, is it possible for people who are outside of a geographic area to be part of a program in another area? In a virtual group?
Yeah, I think each group leader, you can certainly start by emailing or contacting that self-help group leader. We offer a variety of different groups, and what we've heard from people the past year is they really want to meet with people who have shared lived experiences. And so we're continuing to develop groups based on the needs that we're learning about. I would also encourage people to check out, if you haven't, our Facebook online community. We have over 6,000 members of that online community, and it's growing rapidly, and people really find a lot of support through that community. They turn to each other and problem solve, and we are seeing and hearing from a lot of people who are newly diagnosed on that Facebook group.
Great, thank you for that. Julie, you want to add anything in? I gave the opportunity to Karen to add on to yours. I'm asking you if you want to add on to Karen's.
I'm just enjoying the conversation.
Okay, that's great. Well, that's fabulous. And so I'm not going to ask any more questions other than to ask if either of you have anything you want to add.
I don't think there's anything I want to add, but I want to just say thank you to those who joined the call tonight and for your questions. And Stuart, want to thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure meeting you. And I just want to thank you for what you're doing to educate and empower and advocate on behalf of the MS community, because it's really, we're all in this together. And so I just really wanted to say thank you.
That's true. Thank you very much for that. And we will get this posted up onto our YouTube channel. We will be telling everybody about it on social media. And I'm sure that hundreds more will watch this at their convenience, not when Stuart says that a program is online. All right. And they have kids to take care of, or school to worry about now the next day, or those that have gotten back to work, or whatever it might be. Okay. So there are people that are writing in. Thank you to all for all this great information and all the questions that were asked. Julie, do you have anything you want to add?
I do want to thank you for the opportunity.
No.
I do want to thank you for it's a long day here. I want to thank you for the opportunity, but you mentioned people going back to school, and it reminds me that we're all in different places, and the Delta variant and COVID and things are worsening in many places, and people are having to go back out. I have the luxury of working from home, and not everyone has that. And so I just respect the anxiety that people are experiencing. I thank them for tuning in to learn how to keep themselves safe, and just encourage you to keep doing that. We will get through this, and we will just have to lean on each other for support along the way. But thank you.
Thank you for that. And I want to thank you both again for joining us tonight. I know it was difficult for you all with the children, just like it's difficult these days for everybody to get online because they're having to take care of their children and getting ready for school the next day as well. So I do want to thank you again, and I look forward to speaking with you both again. And I hope to be able to give you both a call very shortly. Okay, so again, thank you for everything, and we will see you all soon. And all I can say is have a great night. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.